This is the city of Mosul in Iraq. And until a few months ago, this was a city of around 1 million people that was under the full control of a terrorist group. The military push to free it began almost a year ago in October. It was the final weeks of the Obama administration, and the administration officials that I was speaking to were hopeful that they could finish the fight for Mosul before Obama left office, meaning around January. Folks, let me just tell you that I spent the better part of the last year in and around Mosul. I nearly missed Christmas with my family. I came back in January. January came and went. I nearly missed Easter. I did miss Easter. I nearly missed my mother's birthday. I did miss my mother's birthday. And it wasn't until July, so 7 months later, that Mosul was finally freed. And the liberation came at an enormous cost. The western part of the city, which is also the most historic, and which is what you're seeing here in the slide, was the area where ISIS decided to make its last stand. On the day that the city was finally freed, my team and I entered this particular neighborhood in armored cars. It was hands down the worst destruction that I have ever seen, and I have covered wars on multiple continents, as well as the Haiti earthquake. It was to the point that the American general who was leading the fight against ISIS called it, quote, "the worst combat I have witnessed in 35 years." I wanted to show you a video that I shot on my iPhone, basically through the window of my Humvee. Does that give you a sense of how bad it was? In my opinion, it's a sign of our hubris and of our arrogance that we thought that we could defeat this group in basically a matter of months. The fall of Mosul was a big deal. It finally came on July 9th. I was there. And just this week, the city of Raqqa, as you might have heard, has also fallen. In all, ISIS has now lost almost 90% of the territory that it controlled in Iraq and Syria, and nearly all of the territory it controlled in Libya, and it just lost the city of Marawi in the Philippines as well. These are important gains, and I don't in any way want to minimize them. But in my opinion, we're once again suffering from hubris. The headlines in recent months have been declaring that the end of ISIS is near. ISIS held this territory, Raqqa, Mosul, these other places, for over 3 years. And in that period of time, they developed an innovative and difficult to detect style of attack. I like to call it the remote-controlled attack. All it takes is an internet cable. We're used to thinking of terrorism as something that is perpetrated by the bad guys over there in a foreign country where they hatch a plot, who then come over here. That's surely the way the 9/11 plot was carried out. But that particular model of terrorism is years and years out of date. These days, the majority of the attacks that we are seeing in the West are not being perpetrated by people who come from there to here. They're being perpetrated by men who never left our communities. They're using nothing more than a Wi-Fi signal to tap into the vast resources that ISIS has disseminated online. These include do-it-yourself manuals that show you how to do everything from using encryption to using a VPN to hide your IP address to how to cook a bomb on your own, in your own kitchen. But increasingly, we're seeing cases where ISIS is not just inspiring attacks. They're also cyber-coaching them. They're online. They're helping the recruit go step by step until he moves into violence. And they're doing it as if they were holding a remote in their hand, just as the way I am now. The first time that I heard the term remote-controlled attack was in 2015, and I heard it in French, télécommandé. That was the term that French officials were beginning to use to describe what they were seeing in France, which is one of the countries that has been hardest hit by ISIS. Let me take you now to Villejuif. This is a suburb of Paris. And it was here on April 19th, 2015, that a 23-year-old man named Ahmed Ghlam tried to open fire on a church during Mass. I'm going to call him example number 1. Here's his mugshot, young guy. But here's the funny thing. He was such a bad shot that before he even stepped into the church that he was trying to target, he managed to shoot himself in the leg. He was bleeding profusely. He panicked, and in a moment that I can only describe as true stupidity, he then proceeded to call 911. When the ambulance arrived, he couldn't explain how he had gotten shot. First, he said that someone shot him, then that fell apart. Then he said he found a bag on the side of the street. He decided to open it. There was a gun inside. It went off. Where's the bag? He said that he dropped it into the Seine. So at first blush, let me ask you, does this guy strike you as a professional killer? As a hardened terrorist? Or does he look more like an amateur? Anyone? Yeah. So let me tell you what police did. When his story started to fall apart, the emergency responders called law enforcement. Police tried to interview him. He was making no sense. So what they did is they went back to the place where the ambulance had picked him up. And they literally found on the ground the stains of blood that he had left, which led, like in a fairy tale, to his car. And in his car, they found the weapons he had used. It wasn't in the Seine. And they also found this, which was his Lenovo laptop. On the laptop, they found a series of chats between Sid Ahmed Ghlam and a handler for the Islamic State. If you read the chats, what's stunning is not just that the handler was trying to inspire him to carry out acts of violence. We know that they've been doing this since the time of Al-Qaeda. What is surprising is that the handler also gave him the tools to do it, quite literally. The handler helped him get the weapons he needed to carry out the attack. Now, France is slightly different than our country. It's a little bit more difficult to buy weapons there. In fact, it's incredibly difficult to buy weapons in France. In fact, you need to have a contact with the criminal underworld. Unless you're law enforcement or somebody who is authorized to have a gun, and there's very few of those, you need to have a contact in the criminal underworld to be able to buy the gun. ISIS provided this for Sid Ahmed Ghlam. I know this because I was able to get the classified briefing notes from the criminal brigade in Paris. This is the first page here. And I wanted to read you the chats that were found on that laptop that I showed you. It begins, this is the handler speaking to the young man. He says, "Okay, brother, now pay attention. You're going to find on that road a sandwich shop at the corner called Atmosphere. Once you've found the sandwich shop, cross the main street and continue straight ahead where you'll find a complex. Go inside and you'll find an area where they park the cars. Look among the cars that are parked there near the big road. Look for a Renault Megane. Once you've found the car, look at the front right tire. You'll find the keys placed on top. Open it and retrieve the bag." In the bag, he found the weapons. Do you see how incredible this is? This is a guy sitting in Syria, okay, who is managing to basically move this man to a parking garage in a suburb of Paris and telling him, look at the front right tire, you're going to find the key, open the back seat, find the bag, open the bag, find the weapons, right? This is what I mean by a remote-controlled attack. Let me give you an example that's a little bit closer to home now. I'm going to call him example 2. His name is Emanuel Lutchman. He's from upstate New York, specifically from Rochester. And this is him here. He was 25 years old in 2015. And that's when he went online, first on Twitter and then on other platforms, and he started communicating online with an ISIS operative who goes by the name, obviously a made-up name, Abu Issa al-Amriki. I don't have a slide of Abu Issa al-Amriki, and that's because there are no known pictures of this man. Al-Amriki suggests that he was American. This is the type of name that ISIS operatives take when they are Al-Amriki means the American. We don't even know for sure if he's American. Just about the only thing we know is that that was his name, and his nickname was the Beast of Islam. Lutchman in Rochester, New York, starts speaking to this handler on December 25th, 2015, so on Christmas Day. He tells him, I really want to go to Syria. I'm dying to join the caliphate. And he asks him, what's the caliphate like? And Abu Issa al-Amriki tells him, it's a dream come true. They talk back and forth about Emanuel coming to the caliphate, but very quickly, the handler tells him, you know what, it's gotten too dangerous, the border's closed, and you can't really come right now. Very deftly and very quickly, the handler then orients him and says to him, you know what, you can't come to the caliphate, but you can still do your religious duty back home in America, in Rochester. Why don't you attack there? This is actually a trend that we're seeing. In 2012, 2013, 2014, ISIS was telling people, come to the caliphate, help us build a state. Then, as the airstrikes increased, they changed their message. And their message now is firmly, don't come here, stay at home, and carry out attacks there. The recruiter then proposed a target. The target he wanted him to attack was something called Merchant's Grill. It's a bar in Rochester. And he proposed that Emanuel Lutchman should do it on New Year's Eve 2015, so basically a week after they started talking. Emanuel Lutchman goes along with it. He seems to be interested. And then, little by little, the handler walks him through every step, including giving him instructions to go to Walmart, where the young man goes. And according to the description that we have in the court briefing, he bought masks, gloves, zip ties, duct tape, and a knife. If the Walmart if the Walmart cashier didn't have some issues with that, I don't know. He was arrested literally hours before going ahead with the attack. The FBI had intercepted the chats, had managed to infiltrate the cell, and thank God, because otherwise this attack very likely would have gone through. Again, do you see what I mean about remote control terrorism? My third example that I'll have time to share with you tonight takes us to India. At the same time that Abu Issa al-Amriki, who's in Syria, was chatting with this young man in Rochester, he was also chatting with a group of men in the city of Hyderabad in India. The ringleader of that cell was this man in the blue shirt. His name is Ibrahim Yazdani. He recruited his younger brother, who's here, and several other guys. Like in France, in India, it's not easy to get a gun. And like in France, ISIS went through the steps of helping this cell of men find the weapons that they needed to carry out their attack. It started in May of last year. Ibrahim Yazdani got an encrypted message from the handler telling him that he needed to go right away to the city of Nanded in India, that's located 200 miles away. He didn't have a car, so he spends the evening trying to find a motorcycle, and he and one of the other men in the cell end up driving all night until they reach Nanded. The next morning, they exchange chats with the handler. The handler says, I want you to go to the Nanded airport. And at the airport, I need you to look up an office that's on the campus of the airport called the DRM office. I want to read you what they say happened next, because of course, thankfully, these men were arrested, and one of the men who was in the cell ended up spilling the beans during his interrogation with police. This is his interrogation record. He says, at 8:30 hours, we reached the spot, and since there was no one, we sat for some time on the pavement. We were then informed by the handler that opposite the DRM office, there are 2 trees. In one of the trees, there would be a white color polythene bag. The interrogation record actually made me laugh because after they spotted the white bag, which is where they believed the weapons were, they wanted to approach it, but they were afraid that it would look suspicious if they just walked off into a field and went to the tree. So they devised a plan. They decided that they were going to pretend that they wanted to relieve themselves. Quote, we spotted the place and I, first on the pretext of urinating, went to check for the consignment. Really smart guys. They found the bag, and inside it was a pistol and ammunition. Again, do you see how incredible this is? This is somebody sitting in Syria, literally thousands of miles away, and he's positioning these men and literally walking them like little pieces on a chessboard up to a tree in the middle of India, where they found the weapons that they were supposed to use. The cell in India was busted because the men, at a certain point, stopped using the protocol that ISIS had told them to use. They stopped using encrypted messages. They started talking on the phone. And the reason they started talking on the phone is because they were trying to cook a bomb, and they were having a really hard time following the instructions that ISIS had sent them. They thought that they were being crafty by using the following quote, we're cooking the rice, how's it going? Have you purified the rice yet? The police officer who was involved in busting the cell told me that they were actually following these guys for a while. They suspected that something was going on. And as soon as they heard these men from a very conservative neighborhood of Hyderabad, where the women are completely covered up and where the men probably never go into the kitchen, they knew something was up. They found, by the way, the half-cooked explosive mixture in the refrigerator of one of the kitchens. Thankfully, many of these plots have failed, and they failed because of examples like this. They failed because one of the limitations of this style of attack is that ISIS is, in the end, relying on amateurs. But with everything that ISIS does, sadly, they do it over and over again, and eventually it works. And there have been several deadly and awful attacks that were perpetrated in this way. I'll give you just one example. It's the truck rampage that happened in December of last year at a Christmas market in Berlin. The man who was communicating with ISIS confiscated this truck, used it to run over people. It's considered one of the worst terrorist attacks in years in Germany. The thing about this style of attack is that, once again, all it takes is a Wi-Fi signal and a smartphone. It's something that you can literally do from anywhere. That's why I caution people when they announce that the end of ISIS is near. The end of the territorial caliphate is certainly on the horizon, but that doesn't mean the end of the digital caliphate. I wanted to show you quickly some of the loopholes that ISIS is using to abuse social media platforms and to get out their message. Back in 2013 and 2014, their main watering hole was Twitter. Twitter, like many companies in Silicon Valley, was slow to respond to the problem. When they started suspending accounts, ISIS quickly found shortcuts around them. They simply opened a new account and used the VPN to hide their IP address so that Twitter couldn't block them. I'm going to show you an example of the Al-Ittisam account. Sorry, I think I skipped that slide. The Al-Ittisam account was a famous account that ISIS used to have. It had 50,000 followers before it was suspended. The next day, it came back up. Within hours, it had about 20,000 followers, and all they did is changed a couple of characters in their handle, and they were up again. At a certain point, Twitter did get serious about suspending these accounts, and at that point, it became basically a game of whack-a-mole with these Twitter profiles. This account here is the account of a guy called Aswarti. He also goes by Lutchman. We have no idea who he really is. He began putting the number, you see 260 up there, the number of his account in order to basically thumb his nose at Twitter and basically say how many times he'd been suspended. This is his 260th. This is his 411th account. This is his 600th account. I stopped counting around 700. In the spring of 2015, a study that was done by Brookings estimated that there were up to 70,000 ISIS Twitter accounts. This is in 2015. Since then, I've heard from sources near Twitter that the company has suspended around 900,000 suspected terrorist accounts, which is, of course, not even getting all of them. So you have a sense of how big this problem is. But I will give it to Twitter. They have gotten better about these suspensions. And by 2016, the group was migrating to another platform, to Telegram. Telegram was created by a Russian inventor. It has an encryption feature, an encrypted feature, so you can do encrypted chats with people. And the problem has actually become, I would say, much greater now. Telegram, unlike Twitter, is not searchable. In order to be invited into the rooms where ISIS members congregate, you need to have what's called the Telegram key. The Telegram key is something like this, okay? It's basically a string of gibberish, and this key was one that I was sent literally on the drive here to Maine. They're creating these keys on the order of, I would say, several dozen a day, creating new rooms and populating the rooms with their supporters. Once again, you see the URL at the top. It's become much more difficult for law enforcement officials to track them because once they go into these rooms, ISIS is able to identify the people that appear to be the most interested in doing attacks. They then invite them to do a one-on-one chat, encrypted, and from there, they leave Telegram and start going to a host of other encrypted platforms, Wicker, Kik, Threema, etc. I wanted to just show you a video that was shot by the researcher Michael Smith. This shows the Telegram platform inside his computer so that you can see a sense of how many of these channels there are. Here on the left side, all of these are ISIS Telegram channels. And he's just going to walk us through them. This thing in blue here, this is the Amok news agency. It's ISIS's news agency. Every one of those is for an attack. This is ISIS's newsletter. This is a video showing Abu Muhammad al-Adnani, their spokesman. More channels. The Adam channel is a really famous one. They're promoting a car ramming that happened in Europe. They're showing where it happened. And of course, this is a trailer for one of their execution videos. So let me just leave you with this. The territorial caliphate is indeed ending. It's very unclear how we're going to harness the digital caliphate. This picture was created by ISIS supporters, and it was archived by the site intelligence community. I think that you recognize the Twitter birdie, and I think the message here is clear. Instead of its trademark blue, the Twitter symbol is now dressed in the black flag of the Islamic State, and it's flying off, carrying with it ISIS's message of violence and hate. Thank you so much.